All right, well, let me ask you a question. You filled your car up lately?
I think I filled it
With
up
gas?
at the worst gas station I possibly could have.
Which one is that?
Well, it was the one. It's on the corner of Creek and I don't
Browncroft.
know if it's Browncroft or Browncroft.
So it's the one that's going to go right by where we're moving.
Yes,
Yes.
because I knew my gas was low, and I thought if I go up to Empire, which is my normal route home, it's harder to get out of the gas station that I have to go to there. And I knew there was a gas station right there in the corner of Creek, and I could drive by from afar and see what was going on with your house. So
Yes.
I pulled in $4.55 a gallon.
That's high.
Literally think I was looking at it thinking as I finished up and the bill was like $83 and change.
Yeah.
And I looked and I thought, wow, that's a noticeable difference.
Yep.
And then as I was driving around over the next couple of days, looking at the other gas prices, I thought, I think I literally filled up at the most expensive gas station that there is because everything was around $4.30 and less. So picked a bad time.
Yeah, I mean, there's no good gas price right now. There's just ones that are worse than the other. And
Correct.
I think you found one of the ones
the lesser of two
that's
evils.
worse than the other. It's encouraging.
But you know what? Look, you pay for convenience.
Yeah.
I chose one that was going to be the easiest route to get home without giving up too much time and wouldn't send me out of the way. Right. And as a result, I paid more for it. It's natural course.
Yeah, and that's...
Am I upset about it? No, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's how a lot of us have probably felt about gas prices lately is, it is what it is.
I mean, do I have a choice? Am I going to walk
No.
to it? No. No, that's a long walk.
So the last time gas prices were this high was, I think it was around 2008. 2007, 2008. And this is when I was working at a TV station in Charlottesville, Virginia, making no money. And I mean no money. And I remember calling mom and dad and asking them to buy me a bike for my birthday, which they just, sent me the money and I bought a bike and I rode my bike to and from work and bought a safety vest because I'd be an illuminating vest because I'd be riding home at midnight on my bike. But that was a case where I could not afford it. I basically lived at a deficit. I made so little that just by rent, food, and those things that I was losing money. So that was when I literally could not afford the increase in gas. So we're back to where we were. And
at that time you saw the increase in gas, but maybe didn't see as significant of an increase that everyone else is seeing at the grocery store right now too. I mean, I can't speak to that. I don't remember a particular situation like you just described, but it's almost like a double whammy here where you're just seeing prices across the board. The fluctuation in price for oil and gas is nothing new. And it's, seems to always be going up and down, and largely because prices are always set by the supply and demand curve.
Yeah. But now we're in a situation where gas prices are really high, and I've had this conversation on the phone with folks. I've heard it because now it's the thing people talk about too.
Well, it's noticeable. Yeah. For us to notice that, I look at it and think, wow, I'm closer to $100 for this tank of gas. Yeah. That when a couple months ago, it probably cost me, I don't know, $50?
$47, $48 to fill up the tank, and now it's like $75. Yeah, no, it's significant. You're not that far from doubling it.
Right. Yeah.
You're not far from doubling it.
Not at all.
And so what we wanted to take some time to do today is talk about why is this happening? Because like everything in the world, basically, everyone has a theory, and everyone likes to place blame on it or say, well, this is why, you can say this is Biden's fault, this is Trump's fault, this is whoever's fault. No, the reality is this is supply and demand. And this is the perfect illustration of it. And so much of cost increases, regardless of what the item is or the commodity is you're purchasing, is simply because of supply and demand. But that supply chain is impacted by so many things. And gas prices goes all the way back, essentially 2 years ago.
Yep.
When the pandemic started.
And I don't know the right way to describe, self-fulfilling prophecy isn't the right way to explain it. But, when gas prices are low, companies will look for it less. They won't drill as much. They
Right.
won't try to find, because they know, well, we're not going to make any money off of the current price
Right.
for where gas prices are. And so what drove that, the beginning of the pandy, to leverage your
Yes.
word, it was all demand.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest sticking points for me from the pandemic, there were 2 times that I think I will, you have an event like September 11th, and I think everybody knows where they were
Yes.
when they heard of that or found out about that happening. And there are 2 things for the pandemic that I think will be with me for the rest of my life. The first one was those first couple weeks in March of 2020 when they started shutting everything down, driving to work. And you know how in Western New York in March, the skies are gray, dark, and gloomy.
Yep.
And so you've got that setting. But I was literally the only car on 590 on my way to work at a normal time when very busy.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, at that time felt very apocalyptic and was just something that I will always have with me. And that was, it speaks to people weren't driving.
Well, everyone stopped driving.
Yeah.
And I say almost everyone stopped driving.
Demand for gas fell off a cliff.
And there were times, I remember, Liz and I would literally go start our cars because we hadn't driven them in a couple of days, and saying, well, let's just go start the cars to keep that, make sure the battery's charged. And so what happened is that in April 2020, so almost exactly 2 years ago, the national average for gas prices dropped to $1.94 a gallon.
Yeah, so why?
Because nobody was driving.
Right.
There was no need for gas. There was no demand for it. This is the same thing that happened with lumber prices last year. Same thing, pandemic related.
Yep.
So the gas companies stopped production.
So
OPEC and these major oil producing companies cut their production significantly because why wouldn't you?
Well, they'll at a certain point they were actually losing money to keep producing to sell gas at that price. And if we take a step back and just talk about supply and demand, I was a microeconomics tutor in Brockport, and I think I would get like $10 for every session that I tutored people. But hey, that is
beer money.
Yeah, at the time, it
money
was
for your.
I could get a 6-pack of Natty Ice Tall Boys.
The good stuff
that would get the job done.
Yep.
And we microeconomics always talks about supply and demand. So that is going to set prices for everything. It will set prices for gas. It's exactly why we're seeing what's happening in the real estate market right now. So that if supply stays the same and demand basically evaporates, no one's buying gas. They have to lower the price to be able to sell it.
Right.
Vice versa is that demand is the same or increasing and supply falls off a cliff. Well, now we've got less gas for everybody who wants to use it. Prices are going to go through the roof. So supply and demand sets every price in the marketplace.
It does. And everything in the marketplace is connected.
Yes.
Everything is connected. And
especially now, and it's such a global economy.
It's a global, but let's use gas prices, okay? Yep. So how do things get places?
All right, we talk about cars. We don't talk about planes.
Right. Well, anything. Okay. Yeah. How does anything get anywhere? How does cereal get on the shelves? Yep. If you want to take a trip how do you get from here to California? Okay. How do goods get to stores? They're transported. Okay. Likely they're transported on a truck at some point. Now, trucker shortage, still an issue, still a problem. So that's caused prices to go higher. Now, the cost of transporting is going to go even higher because of the fact that it costs the trucking companies, or it costs a freight company, or FedEx or UPS that's flying a plane, or even Delta that you're flying on.
Oh, yeah.
It costs more.
Yep.
And therefore, that cost will get passed on to you, I, and you listening or watching, the consumer. Yep. And so, anyway, we're getting off into the woods, but not really, because this is what happens, is that it's all connected. And it's almost like the example I had is I was thinking, when I'm driving and you see the light is red and cars are stopped, but you can start to sense like, oh, it's been red for a while. It's probably going to turn. And I love when it turns and I'm able to just zoom by.
Yeah,
I always feel like,
great feeling.
I won that.
You feel
light.
very accomplished.
You feel very accomplished. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're stopped, it takes time to get back up to speed.
Oh, yeah.
And when oil production essentially stopped,
Yeah, because the companies couldn't make money
it essentially
off of it anymore.
stopped. It takes a while for it to get back up to production. So zoom ahead to just a year ago, March of 2021. We've got vaccines coming out. People are beginning to travel again, feel more comfortable doing these things. The average gas price rose almost 50% to like $2.82 a gallon, which you say, well, that's a big jump. But again, that's basically where they were before the pandemic. So it wasn't as big of an issue, but OPEC and oil companies did not increase production yet. They still had reserves. They had things that had already been produced. And so they didn't until mid to late summer in 2021. Way too late to catch up with the ramped up demand.
Well, and in fairness to them, it's not like a light switch that you can just turn on and everything's there. And it's kind of like they're not going to ramp up that production until they see we can sell it for this price, and this is where we're able to be profitable again. And so it's kind of a lagging indicator for them that as prices rise, well, then it says, oh, we should probably start pumping more, drilling more, and refining more. And then what happens is price continue to rise.
Right.
Everyone starts doing it more.
Yeah.
And eventually, as supply catches up and demand stays the same or comes down, prices start to come down.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually. But to your point, it takes time.
It's the car that was stopped.
Yeah.
And now the light is green.
Yep.
And you don't go to 60 from 0 that quick.
And we're talking about a situation or a theory that doesn't involve a major exporter of gas and natural gas in a war.
Right. So that's Russia's.
So never mind Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
Prices are high right now because oil companies haven't been able to keep up with the drastic increase in demand of people traveling more, flying, driving, whatever it is.
Yep.
But now add into the fact that Russia and Ukraine, key areas of global energy supply, because here in the U.S., they're not a major supply. We don't have a lot of energy that, what is it?
Less than 10%. It's actually closer to like 5.
Yeah.
Between 3 and 8% of our oil comes from Russia. The crude oil comes from Russia. So it's a very small amount. But
we're only part of the global economy.
Only part of the global economy. And in Europe,
huge supplier to
it's
Europe.
A huge deal.
Yep.
It's a huge deal. And we don't live in a bubble over here as much as some people might like to think. America is just its own little part of the world. We don't. And as part of the world economy, Russia is essentially a large gas station.
Yep.
And now we've said, nope, we're not taking it. So that has caused another spike in oil prices of around 20%. And because the demand globally is such an issue or is so high, it doesn't matter here in the U.S. It's not like we're exempt from the cost.
Yeah, we're still going to bear the
gas
prices of what's going on throughout the world.
All right, so here's the $1 million question. If you've made it this far, well, when do we get relief at the pump?
Well, if you've been listening to us, you know that we are not in the game of making any predictions. And frankly, a lot of it's probably going to be tied to what's going on in Russia and Ukraine still until we can get enough. Now, there's other factors. Do we start producing more of that energy here in the United States? Until it all comes down to when can supply and demand normalize? So I don't get the sense that we can't predict where the pandy's going to go from here. But I do think people are more likely to travel. Mm-hmm. And so therefore we're driving more, we're flying more, which means demand probably isn't going to fall off a cliff in the near future.
No. Well, let's take your example. Let's say we try to produce more energy here in the United States. Doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Okay.
You got
to people need to go back to work. This is not something that happens. It's mid-March here. We're entering the travel season.
Absolutely.
More people are driving, more people are flying. We're entering, also coming out of the pandemic. People want to go do stuff now.
Yeah.
Okay. People have a desire to go do these things. So I don't know. It's not going to normalize soon.
No, we need supply to come up.
Right.
Once supply comes back up, which whatever the factor is that contributes to that, that's the point where we're going to see some stabilization and normalization with those gas prices. Mm-hmm. If supply stays where it is and demand stays where it is or grows, we're dealing with not just the prices that we are now. But if demand is growing and supply stays consistent with where it is now, we're going to be dealing with even higher prices.
Yeah. And with where we are right now, this is my own personal editorializing thought. Some people may not agree with it. That's okay. There are worse problems the Wade family could have right now.
Yeah, sure.
Than gas being more expensive. Yep. I think of what's happening in Ukraine and think, okay, this is annoying. This can be frustrating, but we could have it a lot worse.
Without a doubt.
And so that's gas prices.
That's gas prices.
Gas prices are high, probably going to be high for a little while, but if you're looking to throw some blame, this goes back to the pandemic. It's supply and demand.
It's all supply and demand.
And that
everything
pretty
is.
much drives everything.
Microeconomics 101.
Look at you. Well, if you or someone you know is taking an economics course and could use some help, you can email Ethan. He might still be available.
Probably not for $10 a session anymore.
Maybe not for $10 a session. Well, it's inflation, so $12.50 a session.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's enough for this week. Thanks for being with us. We return in the very near future with more Wade into Wealth.